Welcome to the NCO Journal podcast, where we explore NCO professional development. This is a podcast series where we discuss published articles with authors and provide a forum for the open exchange of ideas, information, and solutions. I'm your host, Chago Zapata, managing editor of the NCO Journal at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. Today we discuss the article Adapting to the Pandemic, Community of Inquiry and the Sergeant's Major Academy with Sergeant Major Julio Cesar Armas, an instructor at the Department of Joint Interagency, Interorganizational, and Multinational Operations at the Sergeant's Major Academy at Fort Bliss, Texas. With us is Sergeant First Class Osvaldo Aquite, NCOIC of the NCO Journal, and Senior Editor Tony Mena. Thank you all for being here. Before we get started, though, Sergeant Major, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm Sergeant Major Julio Cesar Armas. I joined in 1994, so it's been a long journey. Here in the next couple of days, it'll be my 28th year of service. I'm an infantry soldier by trade. I've been served every infantry position. I've attended every PME, all the way to the Sergeant Major's Academy, Class 68. So this is very exciting and very satisfying to culminate my career teaching at the Sergeant Major's Academy. It's been a wonderful ride. It's great to give back. And, it's kind of one of those things, everyone I get their ear, I want to tell them, hey, you need to come back and give to the future of the Army. And I really enjoy what I do, but pretty much I'm here in El Paso. I've served in peacekeeping operations, contingency operations, combat operations. I've worked in joint environment for a couple of years. So I work in the Department of Joint here at the Sergeant Major's Academy. So everything was just a perfect fit to me. I love teaching others. I love educating others. Anyone that gives me 5 seconds, I'm probably trying to give them a little bit of knowledge for now or for later down the road. So writing this article was to me, it seemed like an extremely easy fit. It had to be written, and I had the passion to see it and share my experiences through COVID-19 here. I didn't know it was going to get published, but it did get published. So that's pretty awesome. For me, that's an achievement I never even considered or thought of. Great achievement. And so, it's kind of like anything else that we do. Once one person gets a foot through the door, now I have a whole bunch of fellow colleagues here that are looking at doing the same thing. So you should see a floodgates from the Sergeant Major's Academy with trying to share their story, so you guys can spread it around the Army and the NCO Corps.
Well, we welcome them. Keep them coming. This is the place to go. This is your NCO Journal. Just a quick question, though. How long have you been teaching at the Academy?
So I've been teaching here. I did a year of the fellowship, and I am picking up Class 73 as my third year on the platform.
Yeah, so you were there. Your first year was when we were all, working from home and going to school from home and all that stuff. Is that right?
That is correct.
Right as things got exciting, or for some of us, maybe not so exciting.
What was it? Class 70. Yeah, Class 70. Coming back in March, I think it was when COVID really actually had an effect, and I think that's when all academic institutions, not just the military, realized, man, this can become a problem if we don't address it. Then that class ended up graduating, and we picked up Class 71, and that started off with COVID up front. So COVID didn't inject itself somewhere along the year or 10-month process being here at the Academy. It was like right from the jump street. So it was interesting. Like I said, I love talking. I love educating. So that passion of coming in that classroom, as a first year instructor, kind of got placed on the backseat due to COVID-19, and distance education became the primary means of educating. Not something that I was like all thrilled about, but once I took a step back and looked at, okay, this is an environment. These are my tools. I got to get to work, and what's the best way to do that? So one of the many things I've learned through my my fellowship program at Penn State University was the learning types of different learning theories. I know I'm kind of moving ahead a little bit somewhere in the questions, but I think it's all relevant and it's all a great story and how it played out. As one of the questions you asked me was like, "Hey, why did you pick this one?"
Yeah, there's still people who are, we got a few messages on Facebook where people are like, "Hey, we're tired of this. Why are we still talking about this?" It's like, this is still a very important part of the world today. COVID hasn't left, although some people don't believe that it's gone or never believe that it was never here. Whatever the case may be, thing is that this is something that we've all had to adjust to, and regardless of how you look at it, that we still have to. There's certain things that we have to be done. But what inspired you to start this conversation, to submit this article about this specific subject? Now, there's really not that much stuff out there. Is that why? Or, why did you do it?
I think the community of inquiry framework in itself, whether you're in the classroom or you're teaching from distance, right? Distance education, it's extremely important to get to the end state of the lesson, to get the outcome of a lesson. So whether you do it in the classroom or whether you do it at home, it's just the environment is different. But those elements of the social teaching and cognitive elements of the community of inquiry are extremely important for any educator in the classroom, brick and mortar, or at the house. And one of the things, and I wrote this article last year. To be quite honest with you, as soon as the way I found out it got published officially, a lot of my old students sent the link to me. "Hey, Sergeant Major," and they sent me the link. And I'm looking at this link and I'm thinking, what is this? And I actually didn't even open it for like the first hour. I just kind of saw the link and I was like, eh. And then when I finally opened it and I saw it, and I was like, oh man. And like I said, I wrote it last year. And the reason I wrote it was I think there were a lot of challenges here at the Sergeant Major's Academy, talking to my peers. Hey, how are you doing this? How are you doing that? And one of the things with COVID-19, whether people think it's still a threat to us or not a threat, it exposed a lot of vulnerabilities in our professional military education system here in the Army, but just everywhere else globally around the world. Like, okay, now that people can't come in, can we still achieve from home what we've been trying to do at the house? And if so, in education itself, how do we do that? And, everyone has their own ways and everyone has their own techniques. But if you actually you sit down and have a conversation with someone and they start telling you how they do it from the house, education, it falls into one of the many learning theories that are out there. It's not nothing new. It's just, it was a theory to begin with. So that's kind of what drove me, getting feedback from my students. Like, man, this is awesome. I wish we could be in class so I could actually meet my classmates. Having them tell me how excited they want to come in, even though we couldn't come in, because they wanted to meet the classmates. They wanted to see the people that we're connecting with besides a camera, which was a great thing for them. Is like, oh man, now I can put a voice to a face. I still can't meet you. And during class 71, eventually when we came back into the brick and mortar and we came in staggered, meaning, there's 16 per classroom, it was like, okay, five come back at a time. And it was great to see that the connection that they built on the distance education platform transcended and transitioned perfectly right into the classroom. Like, hey, nice to finally meet you. I had students at graduation, the frocking ceremony of class 71, like, you're a Sergeant Major Armas. Man, I thought you'd be taller. I thought you'd be taller. You talk, you walk, you speak, you teach, like you're 10 feet tall. Really? You're only 5'4". So a lot of great moments, a lot of great connections using the community of inquiry. And then when they got to meet each other, it just met the expectation, exceeded the expectation of who people were and the thirst they had for the learning of the curriculum.
Hey, are you still using some of those techniques that you learned during the pandemic, during the time that you were teaching?
Absolutely.
Like, tell me about those. What are you still using?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like states in the article, a lot of it, that social presence. One of the things that you lose not being a brick and mortar in the classroom with students is that social piece. They could see you're human, you know, when you are in front of someone and you talk every single day, you build that trust, that confidence with one another, and you start sharing. But it becomes difficult when you do it from the house, as we're doing this podcast. It becomes difficult to make that connection because right now I'm talking to a computer. That's what my eyes see, that's what my brain sees. I'm talking to a computer. But how do you not only demonstrate that you are a person, but how do they get to express themselves? And one of the things that I do is music. And music was a great way to start everything and to end everything within a day. But it's not just, I'm the DJ for the day. Hey, I'm a person. These are my likes. But I would tell them early on, hey, about 8:30, I'm going to hit you up and I'm going to give you rights. These are the ground rules. And especially our international partners, show us a little bit about your culture, the music. What does it sound like? If you want to sit there and interpret for us, do so. And people love that. So I do that now. I still do it now. I did it towards the end of class 72. Every day when they came in, I had some music going, different types of music. I coordinate with the students and they just love that piece of the pie.
What's your favorite music?
I'm sorry?
Tell me about your favorite music. What's your favorite your favorite music that you play for them?
Here's the thing. I love to hear music due to the beat, the rhythm. If you were to ask me what a song actually says in words, I probably wouldn't be able to tell you. I'm more of a beat music, so most of my stuff is more salsa, merengue, bachata, or something in the 90s, something that has good flow, good smooth, right? Positive energy, projecting. That's my favorite, but I also like country. And so people are like shocked because I play, merengue or whatever the case the first time, and they kind of think of me in a certain way, and then I'm like, I got some Garth Brooks, I blame it all on and they just kind of look at me like, okay, so you're versatile. So, and it's pretty awesome to have those simple conversations that we learn more about each other, and we still do it, and I start off with music. And at the end of the day, I end it with music.
Well, Sergeant Major, personally, I loved your article. My bachelor's is in secondary education. I was a high school teacher for a while. So for you to bring up these teaching theories and distance learning and adult learners, and man, I was so excited. Plus, I love seeing change and adaptation to, I guess, stimulants like the pandemic and what it does to units and people and how everyone adapts. So yeah, your article was just right up my alley. So thank you for that personally.
I would credit everything to Dr. Barbara Yancey Tooks, because to be honest, we were having a discussion of how we were, as the educators, dealing with teaching from the house, what worked for some, what didn't work for others. And I would say one of the biggest challenges for me coming in, I wanted to be in the classroom. I wanted to have that touch point with 16 students, 6 weeks, 5 semesters. And that's not what I got. I got here and they're like, all right, we're going to go to the house. And I was like, what do you mean to the house? And one of the biggest challenges for me personally was I didn't own a computer. I owned a little Mac Pro, and it does the job. I did all my college, my education on it, but in order to actually be set up to educate from home, that became a challenge because you only have one screen, and the screen's only yay big, right? So having a good concept, talking to my peers that were here during that springtime from when COVID really hit during class 70, that their advice. So I had to go home and look at it. And I'm like, I don't even have a desk. Most people say, oh, my desk or my office. I didn't even have that. I was just working off my kitchen table. So I had to get right. I had to prepare myself, and thank God, everyone here at the Academy is very supportive when you're a new guy, a new fellow coming in as part of the cadre, and it's like, okay, this is what you need. And they gave me the rundown, but one of the big things is giving me the rundown, giving me the tips of the trade is actually going home, setting up a desk, putting that was my biggest challenge. And of course, being new and not having the ability to reach to your partner that's in class with you. If you're a little confused, it's like, all right, hey, go on break, put it on mute, call on the phone and say, hey, am I on the right track? Or, where normally you do it in person. So those were one of the challenges as a new educator coming in with COVID kicking off. But, I got to adapt and overcome. And the community inquiry, as I learned it through Penn State, I was like, you know what, let me apply this because it really resonated. Community of inquiry, the framework, it really resonated with me. As I'm one of those individuals that you could be the smartest person in the room, but if you don't know how to express it or relate it, it's not sticking. And you could probably be a average knowledge knowing individual, but if you know how to work those three elements of the COI, the outcome, the participation of the adult learners in the classroom just flourishes. And that's an awesome thing to see and experience. So I started incorporating it in my lessons from the house. And as we were coming back in and phasing, slow phase back through, it was perfect. Of course, I had to tweak it here or there to meet everything, but it worked out for me. And I started sharing that and telling others, this is the way I do it. This is the way things are. As my department here at the Sergeant Major's Academy, one of the great things that not only during the actual lessons, but one of the things that we did was kind of a version of Hunt the Good Stuff on Fridays, where everybody in that semester went into Blackboard Collaborate. And, we picked one or two students from each classroom, share that good stuff that's happening. But that was using the tools from a distance and still making that connection with people they normally would walk down the hallway to use a latrine and then run into and meet. But that was another platform that this department utilized to get other people from other classrooms at homes all over El Paso, still have a connection like, hey, you guys are one pod. This is your semester. You're in this department. And it was a great tool that Mr. Ramsey, our chair, and our vice chair, Sergeant Major Walters, at the time, they implemented, not just for the lesson, but for that social aspect that we're all humans, we're all going through something, but there's ways to recover and we have support, even though we can't come in and connect face to face, shake your hand, give you a nice pat on the back or a chest bump. They can still do it, and they're sharing. And it was just amazing at the end when we were coming back in at class 71. The connections, like, oh man, you're, and it was just an awesome thing to see. And I think whether we knew it or not, we were utilizing the elements of community of inquiry to make those connections. And when they finally met, that was pretty awesome.
Can you explain the community of inquiry framework briefly? Just so that we have background here.
True. So the community of inquiry, the framework, is how to have that safe and secure learning environment that uses the three elements of the social element, the cognitive element, the teaching element. So the social is for everyone to see each other as people, humans, that come with experiences, that comes with knowledge. The cognitive piece of the community of inquiry is, how is it that we get our adult learners to stay on that learning, analyzing path, the critical thinking path? So they're not reciting nothing back to you. They're not remembering just to give you an answer, but they can actually formulate an answer. And the answer is a little bit complicated, a little bit complex. They might not know the whole answer, but it's enough to get a conversation started that is guided by the instructor, that teaching element, right? the teaching element isn't like I'm in charge of the classroom. I'm in charge of the learning outcome. And how do I get people to feel safe and secure into that social element of 16 people plus the instructors? And how do we bring out that cognitive piece of sharing experiences, sharing knowledge, sharing what they read the night before and how they interpreted that information in accordance with what we show them in the PowerPoint. Now, the PowerPoint is just wavetop figures, but if you read, it has a lot of it, the substantial piece in it. And we develop those conversations. And we start sharing because, as we know here at the Sergeant Major's Academy, you got every MOS that comes in here, and everyone has a different lens. They look at the same thing from a different perspective, a different experience, or different knowledge of how it works in their field. And that's really what we want to bring out. And you as an educator, which is that teaching element, right? That teaching element piece of the pie is critical. You're in charge of the classroom, but you're not dictating or running it as you were left, right, left. Is you're just steering the conversation to meet the outcome and providing that safe learning environment for them to feel comfortable to express themselves and share their ideas. That's the magic of it, and then how does the lesson tie into every individual? So one of the big things, I work in the joint department. Some MOS is like, I've never worked in a joint world. Okay. So let's think about your career path. Have you ever worked here, there? One of the things is 79 Romeos, recruiters. They're like, I never worked in a joint. I'm like, don't you go to MEPS? Well, yeah. You ever worked at MEPS? Well, yes. So what do you think MEPS is? And they've never put, that connection together. And they're like, oh, I guess I have. I just didn't know it. And I'm like, so you're going to discover here in the joint department, you've done a lot of things that you didn't know. And I'm going to draw those experiences. I'm going to draw that knowledge of that perspective, that point in time, and show you how it fits into what we're trying to teach you here bigger. But at that point in time, you were focused in your job doing what you had to do. So I don't know if I straight definition to you, but I try to explain them because to me, that's the beauty about these elements. And you got to find a perfect balance to meet the population of adult educators you're teaching on how to inject that social presence so it doesn't override the teaching presence or the cognitive. The same thing with the cognitive and the teaching presence. So that's one of probably the art of, as the educator, knowing how to balance the social, cognitive, and the teaching presence to establish that good, safe learning environment that people want to share. Not have to, but want to share. Even if it's a thought, they want to share the thought because they want to get another person's opinion. And to me, that is success here. And that's what we do that's so great at the Sergeant Major's Academy.
I actually enjoyed, I guess, the article and the theory and basically what you just talked about because it mirrors a lot of what public education had to go through also and their transition to that year of online learning. Because my son went to middle school and he did a year of online and it was hard on both ends, both for those teachers to switch over like you guys did, and then for him growing up in a physical brick and mortar, then he had to learn how to learn online. So again, another reason your article resonated with me. But my question is, I know you talked a lot about the things that were working, especially from community of inquiry and your switch over. What did you struggle with? What was something that didn't work right away and you either had to learn how to do it correctly or you just scrapped it and went to something new?
One of the things I had to learn quickly was Blackboard. As in Penn State, we didn't use Blackboard. We used Canvas. So it's a different platform. And not being able to come into the academy and get that training from the hands-on portion training on how to manipulate Blackboard, because that, to be honest, that's our weapon system here. Every job that you have, there's different weapon systems that you utilize to be successful. And to me, one of the biggest challenges was mastering Blackboard. as I was a new instructor coming in, and I didn't get that touch point with my partner, Dr. Barbara Yancey Tooks. We were not able to make that connection. So the system itself, my weapon system to be an educator here at the Sergeant Major's Academy, is blackboards, is a computer, is knowing how to work the camera, is how to play video without having the feedback on the other side, and possibly lose credibility of the professional institution and a professional myself. Those were my problems, my issues. Once after first semester, and I had a running tally, but on my desk, I messed that up. And when I looked at it, I was like, it's using my weapon system. That was my challenge personally. After first semester, once I saw those challenges, and Mr. Rydell, I believe he's out there with you guys at your location, working in a different area, but he's out there. He used to be one of our DACs here in our department. I'd just be on the phone calling him over and over and over, like, how do you check grades? How do you input grades? Those type of things, that connection that a senior instructor teaches a younger instructor, that was a challenge for me because I didn't have that, at least the hands-on face-to-face portion. So everything was over the phone, and it's like, go to the tab. What tab? Those type of things were my challenges.
I want to digress a little bit, or go towards in a different direction here. One of the questions that I wanted to ask was, why is it important that we continue to talk about COVID-19 and its implications? And to be honest, I haven't seen that many articles and that much stuff. I think people are tired of COVID-19 during the height of the pandemic, and people, I don't think, don't want to talk about it. But what do you think? Why is it important that we continue that discussion?
Working here at the Sergeant Major's Academy, we're an Army organization that's mission is to educate. And I think if we lose sight of what COVID-19 and how COVID-19 exposed our weaknesses, and we're like, okay, we're getting back to the normal, and we forget how to the steps that we took to overcome COVID-19 in the educational environment. If we forget that, we might be there very quickly again. As we know, the rotation of staff and people change out. But I think we need to be cognizant that we might just be right back at the height of COVID-19 next month. We don't know that, and I think it's very important to understand that this is something that affects. This is an outside the organization element that affects how we educate. So we always got to be cognizant that it's still there. It's not eradicated. It's not 100% gone. Regardless of whether people think it's real or not, it's still a factor that has a vote in how we do business here at the Sergeant Major's Academy.
Let's go back to, there was something that you said a little while ago, where you said that you started implementing the community of inquiry framework. Is this something that you adapted yourself on your own initiative, or was it the Sergeant's Major Academy that kind of pushed it down and said, okay, this is the way we're going to go? How did that come about? Or were there other options of what you could have done instead of, say, using the community of inquiry? You maybe use something else? Or
I would say something that I personally did, and I can't speak for anyone else. Like I said, that first semester was very hard to navigate. And like I said, I kept a running tally of all the challenges I met and things I wanted to achieve. So one of the big things, that I saw was the connection. When people connect, when people feel comfortable and start sharing a little bit of the personal life, or make a joke or crack a joke, and I realized in my core room, that was not occurring. So I knew that trust and confidence within each other, within me as the educator, within my partner as an educator, that wasn't there. And like I said, I was thinking, okay, well, I just went to Penn State University on a fellowship about adult education, lifelong learning. There's got to be millions of theories out there that I learned. So which one did I resonate with through my year? And, looking through my notes and everything, I was like, let me take a look at community of inquiry, and it totally hit perfectly what I wanted in my classroom. So I personally adopted that. Everyone had different techniques, and I can't speak for the techniques they utilize or whether they fit another learning theory. But I knew as soon as I saw the social cognitive teaching and how, one can't survive without the other, I started spreading that to my counterparts here in the DGM department and the other departments that I knew. I'm like, hey, have you tried this? Have you tried that? Have you tried this, that, or the other thing? Something so simple as saying, hey, my international student, hey, do me like a PowerPoint with all the different types of foods you would have for breakfast, lunch, dinner, instead of the music, and explain what it is and how does it make you feel. And they're like, they get into it. They really got into it, and I was like, okay, that trust is now there. So let's start thinking. How do we start getting them to think from the house? Because if you're not up on the camera, you could definitely be in the back just ask the question, hit the button. Roger, Sergeant Major. I understand, Sergeant Major. So how do you get them to stay active all the time? To always be thinking about the lesson that's being shared, the experiences, and so forth. So one of the things that I did, and I still utilize here in the classroom, is all right, call a friend. Call a friend. So if you ask me as the educator a question and I answer your question right at the end, I'd be like, okay, call a friend. So they had 15 other people in the chat group, and they would just randomly call someone, and everyone would see they're caught off guard. So a lot of the feedback I got is like, we had to be on our toes because you never knew when you were going to call on us or our partners, since you want the conversation to continue to grow and share that experience. Call a friend. And they know each other, in the chat groups behind. I can't see them on camera, but they know who's at their desk or not, and they call each other out. So it kept them all engaged, whether they wanted to or not. So it was pretty awesome to hear the feedbacks of like how I kept them on the toes. That to me, that was pretty awesome. And they're like, I had to do the readings. I actually had to do everything. Like, even though I'm not in class and you couldn't see me, I had that fear someone was going to call on me and I was not going to be ready or prepared.
That's an interesting point that you made, Sergeant Major, because as I'm looking at this from the lens of an NCO, a new NCO or an NCO that hasn't had the opportunity to instruct, that's a big takeaway for them, right? For them to be able to see, yeah, you know what, if I want somebody to be engaged in, because we all train, if I want the people that the soldiers that I'm engaged with to be part of this training, that's one technique that you just perfectly placed in their pocket now that they can use and say, hey, you know what, I'm going to do call friend or call buddy or however the thing may be. That's a takeaway that I think is if I'm reading this article, if I'm listening to this podcast as a young NCO, somebody that hasn't been able to do that, that's a big, huge takeaway. So I really like that example. And if you had others, please share.
So an example I would like to share with you guys is one that I use in the virtual world or here in the brick and mortar environment. So every group, you have a class leader, and I tell the class leader very upfront, if I ask a question and we go about 3 to 5 seconds with silence, I am always going to go to you. And come in, Roger, Sergeant Major. And day one, what do you guys think about the capabilities of the United States Army? Or a question, whatever. And they go silent. I'm like, class leader. And the class leader and everyone thinks it's funny. Well, I do that the second and third time, and everybody automatically establishes a connection with, we need to help this guy out. We don't know him, but we failed to do something, so he's paying the price, in a sense, by having to answer and speak and to the question being asked. And then all of a sudden, I'll take that. Sergeant Major, I got that. Or Sergeant Major, hey, let me add on to his statement. So I call that co-signing. Are you going to co-sign or deny his credit? And they like raise their hand and they're like, Sergeant Major, I'm going to go ahead and co-sign his statement and I'm going to add to. And they do so. Or I'm going to deny his credit based off my experience because I saw it work this way. And the conversations become so great sometimes that I have to be like, okay, ceasefire. Ceasefire. So let's tie this into the next piece. Or as they're talking, I know what's coming up next and I lead that conversation, tie it to the next thing, next major point in the lesson so we can continue that lesson flowing. So it's all one massive story, I guess. But that's one thing that I do. Are you going to co-sign or are you going to deny the credit? Another thing I tell them in classroom or at the house, day one, every semester is one of the greatest things you can do and make an educator smile is raise your hand and answer a question and start off answering that question by saying, well, Sergeant Major, let me answer that question according to last night's readings, and then give me your answer. I'll be like, oh man, he did the readings, she did the readings, life is great, this is going to be a great class. If you want to put a smile on your instructor, according to last night's readings, blah. Or according to the slide, blah. And give your statement. And it just sets a different tone. Those little simple words at the beginning, according to last night's reading, and everyone chuckles. But everyone starts looking like, did he actually do the reading? I know in the chat group, he said he didn't do the reading, but did he do it? And everyone just raises the level of awareness and, okay, I at least got to skim, or I'm not saying they don't read, but I'm saying, they take a little bit more effort in doing those type of things.
You brought up some really great strategies with your call a friend, your class leader, your music, your projects for international students. What are some things that you have learned, either through the pandemic or through your fellowship, that a unit leader at, say, an infantry unit, since you've done a lot of time there, what's something that they could use to start building these relationships as a leader?
I would say probably the most important thing, so my son, he's in 2nd Brigade here on Fort Bliss. So, he shares with me his daily troubles or successes. And one thing I've realized, nothing's really changed over the years as far as young leaders trying to lead subordinates and teach them the right way of doing things. But one of the biggest things that I inject into him and hopefully answers your question is, do you really know your soldier beyond the personal data sheet that you have them fill out? Do you know their strengths, their weaknesses, their desires, their dislikes, what they really value? And I take the time every semester as we start to know those things about my soldiers.
Thank you for being with us, for taking the time to have this conversation with us and to expand on your excellent article.
You guys take care, and thank you for having me, and I appreciate the opportunity. Like I said, in a million years, never did I think anything, 1, I would write, 2, would be published, 3, I would be doing a podcast. It's my first podcast, by the way. Long-time listener, first-time caller. So hey, I appreciate the first, many firsts for me, and you guys provided me this platform. So I thank you guys very much.
And thank you to our audience. Remember to put your knowledge to the page, submit articles, and get published with the NCO Journal. Don't forget to check out our webpage and follow us on social media. We'll catch you next time on the NCO Journal Podcast.